morning and welcome to the Workforce Observer. We are so pleased to have with us today Jason Ezratty, co-founder and CEO of Brightfield Strategies, a company that provides extended workforce market intelligence and designs innovative strategies that elevate the world of work. Welcome, Jason. It's really a pleasure to have you here. And I don't know if you remember, but your first day that you had a consulting agreement with SIA was my first day as associate editor at SIA. So this is really going back to where it all started. And I'm
Yes.
very excited. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you, Subadhra. Great to see you. And literally day one, moment one. It was Christopher and I walking around in suits in an area that really people don't wear suits. So it was an auspicious start.
It was a very good start, yes. So, I've always relied on your perspective through the years, and I know the future of work is evolving rapidly, hybrid models, AI, gig economy, so on and so forth. But from your perspective, like two or three shifts are really significant and shaping the world of work. And then I'll lead into how are your clients, like, customers reacting to this?
If I wanted to put a line down the middle of the page to figure out a way to simplify it, there are the real things that are driving what is the terrain of work, what do we know of as the topography of work and what influences it. Things like generative AI, right? For sure, that, like all forms of automation that came before it, will shape what we think of and how we carve the responsibilities that people are compensated for. On the other side of the page are all of the things that people are afraid of, that people are trying to react to. And I'm not sure on any given day which one is having a more profound impact, but one thing is for sure, the faster one is the perceptive one. So I think we hear a lot of conversation, a lot of reaction and perceptions to things that might happen and on various timescales that people are guessing at, that I think is far more deleterious than the pace of change and what's actually happening.
So if I had to ask you, what do you think is actually happening with regards to, because this AI hype, it's everywhere, right? And the staffing world is full of it. And the buyers are saying, well, we don't want to get too, we're relying either on their MSPs or their, call it what you will, their master vendor. And they're also looking into it, but, that's a whole other role, just to figure out what we should do with AI, right? So what do you see happening? How is that? What are customers doing?
Well, I think we have plenty of examples from history as to when we've been through this before.
That's true.
In any other shift, one of the more famous ones people like to talk about these days, computer was a job title. It was not a giant thing that took up an entire floor, and then after that it was a tiny thing that only sat on your desk until it was a tiny thing that fit in your hand. So a computer was a person's job. And so we go through those periods of evolution in all of those same ways. And so what happens is it ends up leaving the office of HR and entering the office of operations. When jobs get automated in one form or another, they end up becoming the realm of operations. I remember from my youth in the 80s, the idea of robots making cars in commercials for soda and other things like that. It was already pop culture that robots were doing things on assembly lines, not people. So the idea that we have a new form of bots that are soft in nature and not made of metal all the time, and some of them are actually, that for me is not new enough. So the question is, what is the role of those who manage work as it continues to digitize and automate? I would say it's going to be a lot like those before it. And then it's just great opportunity for those who understand these softer forms of automation.
And your clients, what are they saying? How are they reacting? Are they going crazy, or do you have a whole, I guess, it's a whole spectrum, right? Some who are not. What's the popular sort of response that you're seeing among them?
For what we're seeing now, like this whole concept of, are software developers being replaced by software that develops software? Right now, no. That's talked about a lot more than it's actually happening, including those that make the software and all the claims. For the most part, software developers are still being hired in those in numbers that I don't think are necessarily impacted by those types of Gen AI revolutions yet. I do think that will be happening. For the most part, what we're seeing right now are the companies hiring for the people who are building out all of these technologies. So we see a lot of roles in AI testing, AI building, all forms of autonomous whatever, and what it means to build those things and test those things and manage their rollouts. So the arms and legs of the armies that are building the things and rolling them out to create that tomorrow is what we're seeing in the rank and file spend programs of these coolest companies in the world. In terms of how it's going to change their work model going forward, I think that's all being figured out, and I don't think it's a flip of a switch, and I don't think it's going to show up in every industry, in every region, in every plateau of the hierarchy all at the same time. And I think it's going to take a lot more leadership of the people in the current rank and file to design how these pieces of science come into the design of work, and not just wait to react to it. It's not going to come in a box off a shelf and say, I guess this is the new world of work. We need these folks that are thinking about these patterns to really figure out the nuance of how AI models come into the scaffolding of work.
So apart from sort of, the software developer roles, the AI skills, what other skills are we seeing? How has AI and automation impacted how work gets done? What are like job roles? What skills will be most critical for workers to stay competitive? And obviously I'm talking outside the AI skills, because you need people also, besides software developers, besides machine learning engineers, besides people who can put models together. There are other roles that are also needed. So what are you seeing?
I put that, into three general groups.
Okay.
One is where I think the biggest dearth is right now is, again, like people put a lot of time into the science, then we rely on the engineering to bring the science to the people. But what I still think is missing is that product design layer between the engineering and the human user. The how Gen AI surfaces in the right moments with context, that it feels as natural as it really can and should be. I think the capability is there. I think the shortcoming that we're all a little bit disappointed by is that final UI layer of how does it come into my life? Where I think some of the things, the app developers of those first generations of cell phones that became smartphones, they did such a good job at exactly this, of figuring out the nuance of how do I fit into this person's life in a way that now becomes central to their life. I think in the Gen AI world, we're still seeing people that are giving too much weight to the AI will do all the heavy lifting as opposed to designing something that has nuance. So that's group one. Group two is a technical area, but it's more akin to the way an analyst would usually think than more of a programmer. The idea of the who can write the best prompts, who can have that right relationship with the various LLM models or particular type of LLM model, perhaps one that they've nurtured and honed with their own data in addition, to ask the right questions to get types of responses, inclusive of how it then evolves over time. That's a whole cast of characters in and of itself. And then the final one, and that I think is often not spoken about enough, are the people that, not just from an interface perspective, but business professionals that know the right questions to ask. If the LLM is great at answering questions, it's not always great at, it's still on you to figure out how are you going to take it on the journey, even if you ask for its help in what would be a better question in some of those
For
things.
sure.
You still need to have intuition of how you're going to tie that to the value
Right.
of what you're building, what you're selling, what you're marketing, whatever that thing is, that I think still people put too much power to the machine as opposed to how they're steering the machine.
I think that's brilliant, because I think what you're saying is know your job. Understand the different facets of your job, whatever it may be, before you throw it to Grok or Copilot or ChatGPT, because it's not about the prompts, it's what you ask it, but you can only ask the right questions if you know your subject matter, right?
Exactly. And that's when it
a
really
very good
becomes
point.
special. I think those who will see AI, all forms of AI and Gen AI, as a tool that they can use to forward their way of thinking are the people who are most successful in this area. The folks that are just throwing stuff at Gen AI and saying, oh, that's very interesting. That's experimentation. That's gimmick. That's good for one demo. That's not going to make things different in the ways that the world is changing.
That's a cool answer. Thank you. TDX role in the industry. How does it impact Brightfield's vendor-neutral stance and buyer-supplier dynamics? And you might just want to give like a minute to the audience. What is TDX? I mean, I know it, but...
Sure. TDX stands for Talent Data Exchange. So it is the world's most trusted form of market intelligence in the extended workforce market. And that's because the exchange part is we consume transactional data from as many of the world's largest buyers as we possibly can grab. At this point, it's in excess of 500 that we're pulling in this data. And that gives us not a guess as to what's happening in the market, but a very clear and accurate view of what's happening in the market. So our job is to create benchmarks and distributions of what is normal. And then because it's a multifaceted world, what is normal in light of XYZ type facets of different sourcing models, if it's competitive bid or not, where do you want to be, higher versus lower on the spend spectrum, is it a given country with given skill sets, all of the various dimensions or facets of how that question can be asked. That is our core purpose, to consume that data, make sense of that data, and bring back out to the world in any level of dimensionality that they'd want to ask that question, what is normal on this given day?
Okay, so I'm going to ask you this. I'm assuming you're getting data from customers, end users who are using the platform, and also from staffing firms, because they are also in there, right?
No.
Or no, you don't.
Yeah,
you only get from...
we
okay.
only consume data that we model from the buyer's source. And so we are
Right, okay.
assured that we only have a single copy, so we have no risk of duplicates in our data set.
Right.
And then, so in terms of how we get that information, there's no conflict there in terms of how
Right.
the math works or
Right.
how the business dynamics work.
So what about the whole vendor neutrality? How do you see the buyer-supplier dynamics? What are you seeing? And I know the vendor neutrality is your perspective, but the buyer-supplier, what are you observing?
Yeah, I mean, we're agnostic to the model, so we get to see how, who performs across the board in different capacities. So when it comes to who's getting the best price, who's getting talent fastest, it really depends. I don't think that vendor neutral as a concept is necessarily what's best. I do see pretty clear demarcations between internally managed versus externally managed programs.
Talk a little about that. When you say clear demarcation, what do you mean?
Externally managed programs perform significantly tighter, better, meaning there's going to be more precision on how many candidates are required to land a position, how quickly are the positions being filled. We find that the external MSP does a better job of that than the internal MSP. Right. I can't tell you whether or not the placements made by the internal MSP last longer, fit better. We do have statistics on how they convert to employee status or not. But for the most part, when it comes to speed and efficiency of getting roles filled, which is one of those common complaints, external MSPs do a better job.
That is fascinating. I mean, I think you are I have spoken to a couple of MSPs. I think you're the first person who's actually said that, because there's always a lot of fuzziness about what is better, what is not. And of course, I'm not saying one is better or one is not, but it's good to get this data point out there, I think. Thank you for that. I don't know if you want to elaborate any more a little bit on, why do you think that the external performs better?
It's their business of operation. They have a training house that certifies people on how to do that. They have a broader reach of personnel that they can bring to different things that are going through some bolus flux of a lot of jobs happening at once. It's in the MSP's best interest to figure out how they bring people to facilitate those orders as efficiently as possible. The internal program doesn't have that benefit. What the internal program will almost always have the leg up on is that cultural synergy, both in terms of how the rapport culturally, but also their understanding of who would be a real fit in all definitions of fit. So that, I think, is still where most people say that's why we do this. But I'm happy to say I don't think it's any longer economics. I don't think anyone's saying, well, this way versus that way is less expensive. That's not a driving point to create or remove an external program. One of the areas that it's very helpful, because the whole idea of like what's slow, what's fast, and if you look at an enterprise average, it doesn't tell you anything, because that average is going to comprise of things that are slow and fast. And so part of what we find is very useful, especially to the external MSPs, is when a customer is saying, hey, we expected this to be happening, why are you so slow? If they can say, well, for this role in this environment, we're actually first quartile. The speed we're bringing you is laudatory, not something that we should be lambasted for. And so that's been, so like slow versus fast is not only relative to an SLA and a contract, it's also relative to what's realistic in a marketplace.
That's amazing. Can an MSP reference your tool? I mean, can they
Sure.
also be a customer?
Proudly.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
so they have
we have MSP partners that leverage this data across their analytics environments, and exactly for this reason. My favorite thing that I hear from MSP executives is through our data, they get to see the bubbles before the boil. So they know a problem is about to happen. They can see root causes for it. They can make adjustments and keep it at a simmer.
No, that's great. That's great. Thank you. I think it's a valuable service that you are providing. So back to total talent management. You and I spoke about it in 2006, and you were very into it. You've also spoken a lot about workforce optimization mix, right? So how can companies balance all this to create a resilient workforce in today's market? Also, is it even real, total talent management? I hear different things, so.
The short answer is no. Total talent management, balanced management, like depending on all the terms you might hear being used here, I think it's a theoretical concept that it's kind of like world peace, right? You'll never have it. You're always working toward it, and if only today we can do our part right here to bring, to get this one better workforce decision made, one better policy incrementally at a time. I think that's the reality. Because the way people are solving their problems in the enterprise, 1 quarter or 2 quarters at a time, and the way they need to think about how they hire versus react with external workforce, extended workforce, I don't think that there's any version of someone saying for the next 3 to 5 years this is what would be best, and then it stays true for more than a month. There's just too much volatility in the macro environment to think that anyone can nail a plan that way. So I think the good stewards know that there's a thing as true north, balanced, total talent, and we're always trying to make it, we're just shaving friction toward that thing. I don't think it's ever something you actually get to, especially when we're talking about multinational conglomerates that might have to staff thousands of roles when they're like launching something versus dialing it down. I think there's just so much that's happening in the picture. One thing I do feel sure of, though, is the idea of extended workforce, external workforce, being used to ever more flexibly fill into those moments. How to do that in a way that presents itself with fewer of the downsides and more of the upsides there, I think that would help extended workforce models really continue to take hold.
So I guess we need all kinds of workers, and classifications still matter.
Classifications still matter. We still have most corporations thinking about this decision as to how to not make a mistake. If I get this wrong, I can be sued. If I get this wrong, I can get a fine from the government. If I get this wrong, I'm spending much more money than I need to, or I'm not protected by the right contracts or legal. And so versus if I get this right, I'm this much more market effective. I'm this much more economically efficacious, that shows up in my productivity. That we're not hearing it that way. So it's as long as we're still trying to reduce the headaches and fill the holes, then I don't think this really has a chance, So and for that full swing to the other side of it, I think is a dream we'll always be pushing toward, but not something that any one company can say the year we achieved total talent management was 2027. I don't think we'll read that press release.
Fair enough. It's a moving target. Okay. Buyers' big pain points when it comes to the contingent workforce programs today. What are they?
I think there's the age-old pain points that they still have around trying to manage something at scale that deserves the nuance of more handheld management. You're dealing with people still, and so trying to find staffing companies, MSPs that they can trust to really understand that challenge and take it on in the full heft of it, because we might go through a pandemic, for example, and how proud I was to be part of an industry where the MSPs, I felt, really rose to the occasion and did some beautiful things in helping and working with their customers through something that's hard. So, some folks really showed up in moments like that. So I still think that's very important. Who can I possibly trust to manage the acquisition of hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of individuals into my company around the world, in light of all things happening around the world? That's still a big question. I think the harder intellectual question is, what is my tech stack? The tech stack of yesterdecade versus today versus where it's going is a tricky question. There's a ton of applications, both in HR and procurement, piecemeal, patchwork, confetti of applications that most people are dialing down and trying to figure out, what do we really need? How do they really connect? Why did we buy it in the first place? Did we get it? If not, can we get it? So I think trying to figure out the tech stack is an important feature of it. And for us, that's why it's meant making sure that you can plug into any tech stack and to any situation. Right. So that you're not accidentally alienated like so many other forms of technology have in the past.
Thank you. You've talked about and emphasized about buyers buying better. What does that look like in practice, and how do procurement teams leverage data to make better decisions? Because I kind of think it's tied.
I think the short answer is we help buyers buy better by having a more honest conversation. Your doctor can't help you if you leave off certain things from the list of your activities, and that's what happens in this type of a situation. The buyer is not actually looking, the requisitioner is not actually looking for procurement's help. The requisitioner sees procurement as in the way. So, no doc, I don't smoke, no doc, like all of those things, of course not, is not helping anybody prevent this person from getting sick. And so it's the same thing here. So procurement being armed with data helps them have that debate better. What do you mean? I have this benchmark. It shows that the price should be this. Well, what do you mean? We work with these other 3 companies all the time. Why can't they be better? All it does is fuel a debate. And so my humble opinion is that we'll do a better job of buying better if we reduce the debate and make it an actual collaboration. We can finally mean it. I'm from procurement and I'm here to help. Where if the requisitioner felt that the procurement buyer or the commodity manager, whoever they're working with, was actually on their side and getting them the best thing, but then of course protecting their budget, not getting the best price for the company, protecting that requisitioner's budget by getting them the best thing that makes them and their boss and the budget holder that's paying for this thing in the first place all look like rock stars. If people actually shook hands on that, I think I think a good 80% of the stuff that seems hard now would immediately become easy. I really do, because people are practical.
I think that's a good way to look at it. Make the person who has a rec in there and is looking to hire look good.
Right. So our good friend Brian Pena would always use the phrase malicious compliance. That there's plenty of very smart people. Let us not forget the people that we're talking about that are doing the maverick requisitioning are among the smartest people in the world, building the coolest stuff that we all use, right? So let's not try to outsmart them or just try to stick them down an alleyway they don't want to be down. That's not going to go well. If instead we just embrace what are you trying to buy? Okay, I'm going to help you do that no matter what. Now, by the way, can I also just let you know, here are other options you could consider and actually sell them on the other options. Not make it a compliance thing, but make it I'm going to bring this value add. Did you know that you can, instead of using a Big Four consultant, you can use this person that just came off of 3 projects with that same Big Four consultancy that you want? Because, by the way, that's who you're buying in the first place. Not this time, next time? Okay, just wanted you to be aware. And then at some point you win them, but you're in a real conversation and your data points of what's working and not working are real, and you'll actually steer them. And if we help them with the intel to be strong enough, well, then you'll be a lot more convincing, a lot more quickly. And that's really, giving them genuine choice that will make them better on their terms, as opposed to forcing them down alleyways that they know are colder and darker than the things they're building and need to achieve ever would permit. I think that is the true path to better buying.
Excellent. Staffing firms, they're under a lot of pressure. The industry is a pressure from rate card compression, labor market tightness, clients' demands from value. what can they do to differentiate themselves, in this market? Because it's not easy to forget thriving. It's not easy to stand out.
I think, you may have noticed, I have a gray beard. And as I like to say, I'm old on purpose, and I've been in this industry since 2001. And so basically, that's right at the dawn of VMS-driven, competitive bid, vendor-neutral programs run by MSPs, and then the vendor-neutral MSP where thou shalt not. So it was just at the beginning of that. And what it left was this idea of a master supplier that can sit down with XYZ Big Corp and say, here's all the things I can do for you. And by the way, one of them was electronic requisitioning to make the invoicing simpler and less expensive. But then the VMSs took that away, where competitive bidding became the most important thing, because everyone was genuinely being taken advantage of by all those suppliers. So if they didn't get so greedy with the pricing and they really embraced their customers a little bit better through some of those periods, I think we'd still have a variety of master programs today. And to further the point, I think they're coming back. And so I think a way that a staffing company differentiates itself, to finally answer your question, you didn't think I'd come back around, but I did, is to show everything I can be to you in every country that I can be to you. So that it's an area where either you're the best niche in your niche and you deserve to charge a premium, and I've seen that especially in high tech in Silicon Valley and any of the hotbeds around the world that Silicon Valley buys from, or in other areas where you can do things at regional focus. Oil and gas is a great regional focus. There's so many things that companies can do to specialize within what they do to bring a different complement to the fore. Will they ever get into the bot business? Will they ever be the ones who say, not only can I bring you the people, but I'll bring the RPA and the two-legged humanoid that comes with me as well? I don't know. I don't think so, is my answer. I don't think they'll pivot fast enough. And I think it'll be more of a threat to the profitable yesterday, even though it's down by so much, in ways that they make money. I don't think that they'll pivot that quickly. So I think bots will not be sold by staffing companies, in my opinion.
Okay, so embrace your customer. Give the
Embrace
customer
your
what the customer wants.
and bring the full might of what you can do in all the ways you can specialize.
That's awesome. Any other takeaways for the buyer?
I guess this might be a repeat, but I'll double down on this point because it's the whole reason that we want to talk to this audience, in my opinion, which is don't be a spectator, please, everybody. This is the time. Like, the beauty of Gen AI and all these things is that it makes everyone a master of the technology. It's just down to where your creative ideas can go and how you want to show up in the human layer. So I hope everyone sees this not as a time to sit back and I wonder what's happening. It's not what's happening. It's what are you making happen. So that for me, it's a rally cry moment, not a lean back moment.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for your time, Jason Ezratty. A pleasure.
Thank you, Subadhra. I'll see you in the next 20 years.